The salt air usually clears my head, but today it smelled like burnt diesel and cheap entitlement. I stood on the teak deck of the Steel Guardian, a 35-meter vessel that was more computer than boat. My name's Theodore Patterson, but everyone calls me Ted. I'm 48, and I built this company from nothing after I got out of the Navy 10 years ago. Patterson Marine Systems designs every circuit, every line of code, and every safety protocol that keeps these autonomous vessels running. I wasn't just visiting this yacht, I owned it, designed it, and was currently running diagnostics on the starboard thruster array because the telemetry was showing a 0.3% variance in response time. In my world, 0.3% is the difference between a perfect docking and a $1 million lawsuit. I was wearing my usual working gear, faded blue coveralls I'd had since my submarine days aboard the USS Virginia, and a ball cap that had seen better decades. No fancy suit, no corporate uniform, just the clothes of a guy who still gets his hands dirty. To most people, I looked like I belonged in the engine room. To anyone who actually mattered in this industry, I looked like the guy who signs the paychecks. Back in my Navy days, we had a saying, "Attention to detail keeps you alive." Whether you're 300 feet underwater or designing navigation systems for civilian vessels, the principle holds. One loose connection, one miscalibrated sensor, one shortcut in the code, and people die. That's why I built Patterson Marine with military precision. Every component tested 3 times. Every system backed up twice. Every protocol written in blood, sweat, and the hard lessons of 20 years keeping nuclear submarines operational. Then I heard him coming. Heavy footsteps on the gangway, followed by a voice that sounded like it had been marinated in trust fund money and aged in a lack of consequences. "God, it reeks of old machinery out here," the voice boomed. It was Lucas Hartwell, the 26-year-old son of George Hartwell, whose venture capital firm held a significant chunk of my company. Lucas thought equity was just another word for allowance. He came strutting onto the aft deck, designer sunglasses worth more than my first car perched on his nose, holding a half-empty energy drink, despite it being 8:30 in the morning. He stopped when he saw me kneeling by the access panel, tablet in my hand. Didn't look at my face. He looked at the coveralls. He looked at the grease smudge on my hands. In his world, clothes made the man. In mine, competence did. "Hey!" he snapped, actually snapping his fingers at me like I was a waiter. "You maintenance guy, whatever." I didn't look up immediately. I finished entering the calibration code on the tablet, watched the green verification light blink, and then slowly rose to my feet. 20 years in the Navy teaches you patience. 20 years of dealing with officers who got their bars from daddy's connections teaches you when to speak and when to observe. "Can I help you?" "Lucas?" He blinked, clearly not recognizing me. To him, I was just background noise, an NPC in his personal video game. This kid had never worked a real day in his life, never served his country, never built anything with his hands. He'd gotten an MBA from Stanford and immediately started planning how to disrupt everything I'd built. "Oh, you know my name?" "Good," he said, like he was bestowing a favor. "Listen, the maintenance crew was supposed to be gone by 8. I have influencers coming at noon for my live stream. I need this deck spotless. And while you're at it, fix whatever's making that humming sound below deck. This humidity is making me sweat." He tossed a dirty rag he'd grabbed from a railing right at my chest. It hit me with a soft, wet thud and fell to the deck. The disrespect was casual, automatic. To him, I was just another member of the help. Now, before I tell you how I dismantled this kid's life, let me give you some context about Lucas Hartwell. He saw me as dead weight, a relic from the analog age who didn't understand the digital future. He'd never attended a technical briefing, never looked at an org chart, never bothered to learn who actually ran the company his father had invested in. I looked at the rag lying on my deck. Then I looked at Lucas, taking in his designer clothes, his practiced arrogance, his complete certainty that the world owed him whatever he wanted. "Get lost, Gramps," he said, laughing as he turned to face a camera crew that had just arrived. "Boomers only know how to fix toilets. The adults are working here." He gestured to the yacht as if he'd designed it himself, as if he understood the thousands of hours of engineering that went into every system. "This is premium tech, old man, not a break room for the maintenance staff." My heart didn't race. My feelings weren't hurt. Instead, something cold and clear washed over me. It was the same feeling I got when I found a critical flaw in a competitor's navigation system during my Navy intelligence days. It wasn't anger, it was opportunity. The kid genuinely didn't know who I was. He didn't know I owned the boat. He didn't know I owned the company that built the boat. His father handled the high-level strategy meetings. Lucas was just the innovation consultant, a made-up title we'd created to keep him out of the engineering departments where he could do real damage. He saw a middle-aged guy in coveralls and his privileged brain, auto-completed janitor. I could have fired him on the spot, could have pulled up the vessel registration on my phone or called his father. But that would be quick, that would be efficient, it wouldn't be educational, and I believe deeply in education. Understood, I said, my face a mask of neutral compliance. I bent down, picked up the rag he'd thrown at me and folded it neatly. Military corners, perfect creases. I'll just finish my checks and get out of your way. Yeah, you do that. He dismissed me with a wave, turning back to set up his camera. Equipment. And try not to touch anything expensive on your way out. Some of this stuff costs more than you make in a year. I walked toward the gangway, my tablet tucked under my arm. As I passed the main security console near the stern, I tapped a command sequence that didn't appear in any user manual. It was a ghost protocol, a subroutine I'd built into every Patterson Marine vessel during the design phase. The system records audio and video from every sensor on the ship, storing it in a partition that only I could access. The protocol was something I'd learned during my submarine intelligence days. You never know when you'll need evidence of what really happened. Whether it's a reactor incident 400 feet below the surface or corporate backstabbing in broad daylight, documentation saves lives and careers. I was leaving the boat physically, but digitally, I was embedding myself into the nervous system of the Steel Guardian. Looking good, bro, I heard Lucas say to his camera as I stepped onto the dock. My dad basically gave me this yacht. I run this whole operation now. Going to shake things up, bring some fresh energy to this dusty old company. I stopped on the wooden planks of the pier, looking back at the gleaming white hull of my creation. Every rivet, every line of code, every safety system, all my work. He thought he ran the operation. He thought he owned the boat. He was about to learn that you don't disrespect the person who holds the remote control. I walked to my truck, a practical Ford F-150 parked between two Teslas, and sat in the driver's seat. I opened my laptop and pulled up the live feed from the salon camera. Lucas was already spilling his energy drink on the Italian leather he'd warned me about. Now, to understand how deep a hole Lucas was digging, you need to understand the paperwork. 6 months ago, his father George sat across from me in a glass-walled conference room downtown. George is smart, old-school smart. He understands leverage and liability. He wanted a flagship vessel to showcase his firm's maritime investments. More importantly, he wanted Lucas to have a project. He needs responsibility, Ted, George had said, looking tired in the way that only comes from raising an entitled child. He needs to feel like he's running something real, not just spreadsheets. Steel, engines, water, something tangible. You want me to hand over my prototype? I asked, sipping coffee that cost more than my first hourly wage back in the day. Not hand over, George corrected quickly. We structure it as a long-term operational lease. He becomes the marketing manager for corporate events. Makes him look like he's accomplished something. It's good for our image, and frankly, it keeps him out of the actual office where he breaks expensive things. I knew Lucas was trouble. I'd seen his type in the Navy, officers' kids who thought rank was genetic. But I also knew Patterson Marine needed George's next funding round to expand into Asian markets. The company was profitable, but growth required capital. Fine, I said, but the title stays with me, insurance stays with me, and systems administration stays with Patterson Marine. He gets user-level access. He can steer, he can host parties, he can blow the horn, but he doesn't touch the root code. George waved his hand dismissively. He doesn't know code from calligraphy. He just wants to play captain and make social media content. We signed the papers. The contract was 73 pages long. Page 68, paragraph 7, subsection D contained a clause I'd inserted personally. The owner override protocol. In the event of misuse, safety violations, or reputational damage to Patterson Marine Systems, the legal owner, me, retained the right to assume immediate and total control of the vessel's navigation and operational systems, remotely or on-site without prior notice. George didn't read page 68. He was too busy thinking about how to keep his son occupied. Lucas definitely didn't read it. He just saw the shiny keys and the Instagram opportunities. Back in the present, I sat in my home office, surrounded by monitors that looked more like mission control than a study. The room reflected my Navy background: clean, organized, everything in its place, and a place for everything. I pulled up the legal documents on my main screen. Lucas thought the boat was a gift. He posted it on Instagram with captions like #self-made and #entrepreneur and #bosslife. He didn't realize he was essentially driving a rental car where the landlord could kill the engine whenever he wanted. On my secondary monitor, the Steel Guardian systems were humming perfectly. I could see fuel levels, battery charge, water tank status, engine temperature. Everything was optimal. Thanks to the Ghost protocol I'd initiated earlier, I could hear everything happening on deck through the security system's audio feeds. "Dad just doesn't get the new economy." Lucas's voice came through my speakers crystal clear. He was talking to someone on speakerphone, pacing the bridge like he owned it. "Ted is dead weight. He's analog thinking in a digital world. Who needs all these paranoid safety protocols? We need speed. We need AI integration. We need to move fast and break things." I leaned forward in my chair. Move fast and break things. The motto of people who've never been responsible for keeping anything working, never had lives depending on their attention to detail. "I'm telling you, bro," Lucas continued, presumably talking to one of his MBA buddies who'd also never built anything real, "I'm going to push him out. The board loves fresh thinking. My live stream demo next week, I'm presenting a new vision. My vision. Once I show them how much money we're wasting on his paranoid engineering standards, he's done." My fingers hovered over the keyboard. So it wasn't just casual disrespect. It was a calculated coup. He wasn't just treating me like hired help. He was actively plotting to remove me from the company I'd built from a garage startup into a leader in autonomous maritime systems. He was going to use my boat, at my demo, to convince my investors that I was obsolete. He was planning to stand on the deck I'd designed, using the systems I'd engineered, to argue that the person who created it all was holding the company back. The irony was perfect. The kid who couldn't change a light bulb without calling maintenance was going to lecture me about technical innovation. I looked at the admin override icon on my screen, a simple red button labeled Emergency Protocols. I could lock him out right now, turn off the lights, seal the doors, and blast Reveille over the PA system until he begged for mercy. But that would be reactive. That would be emotional. Ted Patterson doesn't do emotional revenge. Ted Patterson does strategic demolition. He wanted to present a new vision at his live stream demo. Fine. I'd make sure he had the most memorable demo of his streaming career. I opened a terminal window and began typing. I wasn't just watching anymore. I was preparing the stage for his education. In the Navy, we called this setting conditions, arranging all the variables so that when the moment came, physics would do the rest. Over the next 3 days, I became a digital ghost in my own machine. I didn't set foot on the Steel Guardian, but I lived there through the security cameras and bridge microphones. I watched Lucas turn my masterpiece of engineering into a floating fraternity house. Tuesday morning, he hosted what he called a strategy brainstorming session that involved 3 cases of craft beer and a DJ who seemed to think volume was a substitute for talent. I watched through the salon camera as ash from his vape drifted onto my hand-laid teak decking. I logged every violation, not for insurance purposes, but for the case file I was building. The physical damage was annoying, but the verbal garbage he was spewing made my blood pressure spike. That afternoon, he brought a group of potential angel investors aboard, mostly 20-something crypto millionaires looking for their next dopamine hit from disrupting something. "So who handles the tech architecture?" one of them asked, pointing at the helm displays through his designer glasses. "This interface is pretty slick, very intuitive." "Oh, I supervised the whole UI redesign," Lucas lied smoothly, leaning back in the captain's chair with his feet up on my console. We had some legacy engineers, old-school Navy guys who wanted to keep everything clunky and military style. I had to step in and streamline the user experience. The main engineer, Ted, he's basically a dinosaur, great for maintenance work, but he doesn't understand modern user journey mapping. I sat in my office, knuckles white around my coffee mug. Dinosaur. I'd written the kernel for that operating system in my basement while he was still learning not to eat paste. The intuitive interface he was claiming credit for had taken me 18 months to perfect, with input from actual ship captains who'd used it in everything from calm harbor maneuvers to Category 3 storms. Yeah, these boomers, another investor chimed in, they're so locked into the old ways. You need fresh blood to really innovate. Exactly, Lucas said. Innovation doesn't come from playing it safe. It comes from bold thinking. That's why I'm positioning myself to take over technical leadership. This company needs someone who understands where technology is heading, not where it's been. I made a note in my planning document. Subject claims technical leadership capability. Evidence suggests otherwise. Wednesday brought the most damaging intelligence yet. I had to physically visit the marina to sign off on a fuel delivery. Coast Guard regulation required the legal owner's signature for commercial vessel fueling. I wore a polo shirt this time, trying to look less maintenance guy and more executive. Lucas intercepted me on the dock. He was with some social media influencer, a blonde whose main qualifications seemed to be looking good while holding expensive things. "Hey, you," he called out, not bothering to learn my name even after our previous encounter. "Hello, Lucas. Did you fix that humming sound? I told you specifically the engine noise was bothering our content creation sessions." "I'm not the mechanic, Lucas," I said calmly. "I'm here for the fuel manifest." He rolled his eyes and turned to the blonde. "See what I mean? Impossible to get good help these days. You give these old guys a simple job and they give you attitude about it." She looked uncomfortable, like she sensed something was off but couldn't place it. "Babe, I think maybe he's fine," Lucas interrupted. "Just another boomer who doesn't like taking direction from someone younger. Generational thing." He turned back to me. "Just grab some paper towels while you're here. Someone spilled wine in the salon. It's getting sticky." He held out a crumpled napkin from his pocket, stained with what looked like red wine and God knows what else. I took the napkin. It felt like holding evidence of my own humiliation. "I'll see to it," I said, my voice so level it could have been generated by AI. I walked past him onto the boat and went to the salon. There was indeed a wine stain on the cream carpet, expensive Italian wool that I'd selected personally. I didn't clean it. Instead, I took a photo with the metadata showing exact time and location. Then I took photos of the empty bottles scattered around the coffee table. I documented the confidential company documents he'd left lying open on the sofa. Quarterly projections that should have been locked in the company's safe, not displayed like casual reading material. This was a security violation that could trigger immediate termination under corporate bylaws. But I didn't call the lawyers. I just documented everything, building my case one photograph at a time. As I was leaving, I ran into Charles Henderson, one of our longtime investors. He'd backed me 8 years ago when Patterson Marine was just blueprints and dreams. Charles had served in Vietnam, understood what military discipline could accomplish in the civilian world. He looked at the napkin in my hand, then at the chaos visible through the salon windows, then at me with the kind of expression you see on a father's face when his son comes home with a black eye. "Ted," he said quietly, "I apologize for this atmosphere. George's boy is energetic." "He's something," I agreed. "Are you just going to let this continue?" Henderson asked. His tone was careful, but I could hear the underlying question. What happened to the Ted Patterson who never let anyone push him around? I smiled. It was small and dangerous, like the smile a submarine captain wears when he's got a perfect firing solution. "I'm just collecting data, Charles. I believe in comprehensive intelligence before taking action." He nodded slowly, recognition dawning. "I see. Well, I'll make sure to wear a life jacket to his big live stream Friday." "You do that," I said, "and maybe stay near the exit." That evening, I received the final piece of intelligence I needed. Charlotte Kim called me at home. Charlotte Kim was a junior board member I'd mentored since she was an intern fresh out of MIT. She was sharp, loyal, and invisible to entitled kids like Lucas, which made her perfect for intelligence gathering. "It's worse than you think, Ted," Charlotte said, her voice tight with concern. "Lucas is circulating a formal memo to the entire board." "Tell me," I said, settling into my desk chair. "He's calling it Project Fresh Start. He's claiming your focus on safety and redundancy is costing the company 15% in potential profits. He has charts, Ted, fake charts, but they look professional. He's comparing our development cycles to app developers, not maritime engineering firms." "We build ships that survive hurricanes," I said, my voice hardening, "not dating apps that crash when too many people try to log on at the same time." "He doesn't care about reality," Charlotte continued. He's lined up votes. 2 of the new VC guys are with him. They want quick returns. They want to slash the QA budget and flip the company within 18 months. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. And the timing? He wants to announce your transition to advisory role at his live stream Friday, on the Yacht, in front of the tech press and major investors. He's framing it as innovation over stagnation. So there it was. He wasn't just going to push me out, he was going to do it on my vessel, in front of cameras, using my creation as the backdrop for my professional execution. He's using the phrase, failure to adapt to market conditions, Charlotte whispered. That's the exact legal language needed to trigger the performance clauses in your executive contract. I walked over to my desk and picked up a scale model of the Steel Guardian that I'd built by hand during the design phase. Does he know you're telling me this? I asked. No, he thinks I'm just the intern who orders lunch for board meetings. Good, keep playing that role. And Charlotte, make sure you're nowhere near the Yacht Friday afternoon. What are you going to do? I sat down at my computer and pulled up the Steel Guardian system architecture. I'm going to teach Lucas about the difference between having access and having control. I spent the rest of the night in our server room, surrounded by humming machines and blinking status lights. I wasn't writing legal briefs or calling lawyers. I was coding with the precision that 20 years of submarine electronics had drilled into me. I dug into the deepest layers of the yacht's operating system, down to the firmware level where only the original programmer could go. I found the file labeled demo.lightmode.exe, the standard presentation preset we used for showing off the boat's capabilities to potential clients. I opened it and began rewriting the code. I didn't delete anything. That would be destruction of property. I just added a conditional loop, elegant and surgical. If user credentials equals guest admin Lucas and location equals harbor coordinates and time equals live stream window, then execute protocol reality check. The beauty was in the simplicity. Lucas would have full access to everything right up until the moment he tried to show off. Then physics and mathematics would deliver the lesson his father's money had protected him from his entire life. I saved the file, compiled the patch, and uploaded it to the Yacht server via encrypted satellite uplink. The progress bar crawled across my screen, 97%, 98%, 99%, 100%, update complete. I legally logged the update in our internal change system as Security Enhancement 3.2. The description read, Enhanced remote intervention capabilities for unauthorized operator scenarios. It was the absolute truth. If Lucas's team had bothered reading technical documentation instead of just making TikToks, they would have seen it. Friday arrived with perfect weather, clear skies, calm seas, light breeze. By noon, the marina was buzzing with tech journalists, investors, and the kind of people who measured success in follower counts. I arrived 20 minutes after the official start time and parked my truck at the far end of the lot. I could hear the music before I saw the boat. Electronic beats that vibrated in your chest. The Steel Guardian looked magnificent, I had to admit. Gleaming white hull, professional lighting, camera crews everywhere. I walked through the crowd in my black polo shirt, practically invisible among the designer suits and startup uniforms. I found a spot near the dock's edge where I had a clear view of the upper deck stage Lucas had constructed. He was in full performance mode, wearing an actual captain's hat and holding a wireless microphone. The irony was perfect. He looked like a child playing dress-up with daddy's things. "Welcome, everyone," Lucas bellowed, his voice echoing across the water. "Welcome to the future of Patterson Marine." The crowd applauded. His VC buddies clapped the loudest. "For too long, this industry has been held back by outdated thinking," he continued, pacing the stage like a tech conference keynote speaker. "We've been too cautious, too focused on what might go wrong instead of what could go right." I watched a few actual engineers in the crowd shift uncomfortably. They knew that focusing on what could go wrong is literally the job when you're building autonomous vehicles. "Today, we're launching a new era," Lucas shouted, pointing dramatically at the horizon. "No more excessive safety protocols, no more analysis paralysis. We're cutting loose from legacy thinking." He gestured toward the bow. "In just a few minutes, we're taking this beauty out for a live demonstration cruise. We're going to show you real innovation in action." The crowd cheered. Lucas was feeding off their energy, drunk on his own performance. Then he spotted me in the crowd. For a moment, his confidence flickered. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, covering the microphone, "let's show the world what the future looks like. Cast off all lines." I pulled out my phone and opened the admin app, one big red button labeled Executive Override. "Goodbye, Lucas," I whispered. I pressed the button. The twin diesel engines didn't explode. They just stopped, instantly. Total silence where there had been 2,000 horsepower of roaring machinery. The music died. The lights went dark. Every system on the boat shut down simultaneously. The Steel Guardian became a 50-ton paperweight drifting in the harbor. Lucas was screaming at the helm, pounding buttons that no longer responded. The crowd watched in stunned silence as his future of innovation became a floating monument to incompetence. I walked to the harbor master's microphone station. "This is Theodore Patterson, owner of vessel Steel Guardian," I announced calmly. "Vessel has been remotely disabled due to unauthorized operation by unqualified personnel, requesting immediate tow assistance." The tugboats arrived 20 minutes later. Lucas was still trying to restart engines that would never respond to his commands again. By evening, the video had 2 million views. Lucas's podcast about authentic leadership now has 180 subscribers, mostly bots. I'm back where I belong, building ships that work when you need them to. Some lessons only stick after the power goes out.